Does Theresa May at this point have enough votes to get her deal through Parliament? And what happens if she doesn't?
Well, she doesn't at the moment. She's got a massive deficit to make up.
Yep.
But there is an enormous effort going on to turn around Conservative hardliners and the Democratic Unionists from Northern Ireland, and many of them will reverse direction for the very simple reason that they see quite a high risk now of no Brexit at all, of having a referendum, no Brexit. So their fear of that is that they're getting behind the government's deal, even though it's, from their point of view, hopelessly inadequate.
Will the EU give Theresa May something? So we understand that negotiations yesterday didn't bear any fruit. Is there something at the margin that would actually just push Parliament to vote for that deal?
Well, for some of the Conservatives, they're obsessed by this issue of the so-called Irish backstop, which locks Britain into a long-term relationship with the European Union. And they're looking for some fig leaf, some form of words which enables them to believe that they've actually solved that problem. For people on the other side, there are quite a lot of Labour people who are being pulled behind the government's Brexit deal because they have constituencies which are pro-Brexit. So they have a different set of issues. I think at the moment they're somewhat short of numbers, which leads me to believe, and I'm a strong Remainer, and I believe we should be trying to have what we call a people's vote, a referendum to resolve this. I'm still optimistic that that outcome is possible.
Mr. Cable, as a Liberal Democrat, and I'm going to suggest someone within the middle ground speaking as a foreigner, I want you to comment on Ian Duncan Smith's Conservative comment yesterday, his Leave comment yesterday of an optimism of a new Reformation. I mean, I don't want you to get all Sir Thomas More on me, but where's the new Reformation that the Brexiteers see? Where is that?
Well, to be frank, I mean, that is jargon. I mean, I think what they're talking about is that there is a kind of mood of populism, you know, Trump in America, you know, throughout the world we have these movements, and Brexit, in a way, is the British manifestation of that. But I don't think they're going to get what they want. Mr. Duncan Smith is one of the hardliners who wants what they call a clean break with Europe. I'm almost certain that isn't going to happen. The British Parliament is much more moderate, and we are going to finish up either with remaining in the European Union or with some kind of messy compromise which keeps many elements of European integration. They're not going to get a pure Brexit if that is what is the symbol of the Reformation.
Does the messy compromise happen sooner or later? What is the Vince Cable timeline of a Remain resolution?
Well, it's unlikely to be resolved next week. We keep having what I call a rolling high noon, where we're going to, you know, have a major crisis resolving this, and then it gets put off a little. I think what will happen is that next week Parliament will almost certainly decide to take off the table the option of no deal. It's always struck me as being a very low probability. I think it will be removed. I don't think the Prime Minister will get her deal through, certainly at the first time of asking. And she may then be looking at probabilities, and the option of going to the country with a referendum, where she has probably a roughly 50-50 chance of winning, may seem more attractive than pushing this through Parliament. And so within the next few weeks, we may be heading in that direction.
I just don't see a second referendum. First, how the citizens of the UK would take it. Would they not feel cheated if they voted for Brexit? And how do you put the limit? So last time, the people of this country voted 52 to 48 to leave the UK. What if to leave the EU? What if we get 52-48 the other way? Do you have a third referendum?
Look, I mean, some people feel cheated. There's going to be anger anyway. I'm afraid the public mood in Britain is not good. You know, there is real anger and polarisation on both sides. The current mood, I think your own poll suggests that actually something like 2/3 probability of being won to remain, because it's almost 3 years ago we had this vote. The world has changed. You know, the threats from Russia, the emergence of Trump, who didn't exist at that stage. You know, Europe has a role which wasn't understood at that time. Many of the things which people were promised, a big, cash rebate from Brexit, I mean, all of these things now look wildly implausible. The future of many of our manufacturing industries is seriously troubled. I mean, all of these things are new.
I understand, but what if it's a close call?
Well, if it's, we would have to go into it on the basis that you know, if my side loses, we accept it, the end of the story, and similarly the other side too.
But what if you win by a razor-thin majority?
Well, I mean, that is the problem with referendums, why we should never got in this in the first place. But, you know, if we do have a second vote, a people's vote, then both sides are going to have to accept the result. But the key point is that we then try to rebuild a consensus. We try to rebuild compromise, which is something that's been lost in Britain in the last 2 years.
Mr. Cable, you practiced economics at Cambridge. You taught the dark art at Glasgow a few years ago. I want you to speak to Scotland and to Glasgow right now about what this Brexit, this Remain, this Leave will do to the demand within the United Kingdom. Do you just assume a dampening of demand off of any outcome that we see?
I don't think it will actually fuel the demand for Scottish independence. People in Scotland, as in London, which will heavily Remain, are angry. They're being forced out of the European Union against their will, and that's the reaction of the heart. But I think the head will say, you know, after all the disruption of Brexit, the last thing we want is the disruption of breaking up the United Kingdom. And I think secessionist demands are likely to dampen rather than increase.
Then bring the analysis of the heart and the head over to this combination of the independent group with your Liberal Democrats. Many say it's not going to happen. Can it be a rational middle ground within this great constitutional debate?
I hope so. I think what we may be beginning to see is that the traditional two-party duopoly in British politics is breaking down. The Labour Party are hopelessly split. They have bizarrely, in a Western democracy, they have a Marxist-Leninist leadership and they have a social democratic membership and members in Parliament. The Tory party are increasingly split between extreme English nationalists and more moderate people. And they're starting to crack. And I think there is a possibility, building on this independent group, that we'll have more and more people breaking away, working with us to constitute a new movement of the moderate centre. But that's some way down the road.